So I've been going on and on about my little robot that I was going to do, and I had this shaft like this. It's about this long. It was longer than that. It was actually long enough to put my two back wheels 15 inches apart. And what I did was I pulled out my angle grinder and I cut out a 2-inch section out of the middle of the shaft. So now the entire shaft is 2 inches shorter. And to join them back together, one of the things I was thinking about was using one of these what they call a coupler. It's got a 1/2 inch thread inside. I was gonna thread the end of the shaft and screw that on there, but I can't figure out how to cut threads in this. I just cannot make that work. So what I ended up doing, I took one of those and I ran a 1/2 inch drill bit through it. So now it's smooth inside. There's still a little bit of threads left, but it's 1/2 inch inside, so I can slide that onto here like that, and take the other shaft and slide it onto here like this. And then I just have to figure out some way to keep that on there. And the quickest thing would be just put some super glue on it to keep it from falling apart, since there's no real forces on this. And or I could just drill holes through, put a screw all the way through, or I could drill and tap the face here, make set screws for it, or I could just drill a clearance hole and drill a hole into the shaft and then tap that. So there's various ways I can do to get that to stay on there. But that's how far I got right there. I got the shaft cut. So I committed myself and cut my shaft and put that on. So now when I put the wheels on, they're now 13 inches apart instead of 15 inches. So I just narrowed up everything by about 2 inches. So it's just a matter of now going through and getting a plate to bolt my motors down to, and then just proceed on. Then now I know the width of the back, I can go to the front and do the steering. So that's where that's at the moment. And I don't think I had anything other than I found some code. The stuff Al's trying to do, I found some code on a computer. So when we get that far, I'll mention that. So that's all I got to say for this time, I guess. So it's up to you, or it's to you, or whatever.
Let's see, my current status. I'm able to get, I mean, the GPS is hooked up and able to get sentences and affix into ROS. If I have my base station running, it gets to RTK, which is cool. I reinstalled the Gazebo, what I refer to as Jeff's simulation stuff, on the tractor laptop, just to make sure that was still working, and I was able to do that. In the process of rewriting my wheel encoder devices to publish a left and right wheel tick. Here's a guy that sort of walks through that, and although he uses an encoder that the encoders are different, but the structure is similar. So just been using that. I had a chip robotics IMU that was, they had published a ROS node, and I was getting that reworking, and they don't sell the device anymore, so it was a little bit of a challenge to get the software, since I had rebuilt the laptop a couple of times over, but was able to get that from them. And what was useful about that is the software, or the IMU, lets you reset it. And so I reset it so that pointing east is producing 0, and when it's pointing west, oopsie daisy, which is, in ROS speak, -pi, it's producing minus 180, which is, radians times 180 divided by pi. And so anyway, I've got that IMU hopefully working. It puts out an IMU message, but I've not really tested it to make sure that it's the exact same IMU message that ROS is wanting and expecting. So there's a little bit of hope on my part that that works when it comes time. Let's see, watched a number of GPS ROS videos. This is from Robot Ignite Academy, and yeah, I think both of those are from Robot Ignite Academy, where they talk about navigating using ROS. And I still have the GPS to ODOM code that Matt had provided, and I'm sure that works. But as I was watching other people now have produced some videos around using ROS and navigation, I'm half thinking that I will try to get this EKF localization node working, since I have what is hopefully a good IMU. I have a GPS with RTK, and I've got encoders that can publish the left and right ticks. So I guess, although I've never done it and know that it will be fraught with challenges, and I'm if it can go wrong, it seems to go wrong for me. I was going to give this EKF localization node a go. So at the moment, my tractor laptop Catkin workspace got a package there for the Chip Robotics IMU, this Hector Gazebo, Myodom Publisher, Nav, PCAR. Those all came with installing what I call Jeff's simulator. This NMEA NavSat driver was to get the GPS in, and then I was putting a package in for tractor ODOM so that I had a place to store my scripts that are running on the Teensy, as well as the launch file to launch ROS serial to pull that data in. So, and then I have a beginner tutorials because I used that in order to make sure that ROS was working and installed. And anyway, that's just used for testing. So that's where I'm at. This is just a picture showing the simulator running and able to drive that around. I don't know why I included that. But yeah, that's this is struggling with getting ROS PlatformIO to work. So at the moment, I'm programming my onboard Teensys through the Arduino IDE because I couldn't get that to work. I'm getting this file hash string is ambiguous, so ROS serial Arduino was and PlatformIO are not playing nice. And then that was just a video I watched because it was interesting. Pranshu, took the other guy's model, and I think he gave him an improved URDF. I just thought that was interesting. And let's see, what else did I have in there? Oh, that was the previous week's status. So that's where I'm at.
So I'm thinking that rather than jumping right into EKF, you may want to go back and do what you originally had with just your GPS and the GPS ODOM and drive it that way. There's a lot less things you're going to have to. You don't have to get your IMU running. You don't have to get your odometer running. You don't have to figure out EKF and figure out all the secrets behind that. Because as far as I know, it should go directly from GPS. In fact, one time I asked Matt that because he kept implying that, and finally in one of the meetings I just said, "So you're really GPS only? You're not using anything else?" He says, "Yeah, that's what I'm doing." So he was able to take the GPS at his GPS ODOM. Now there's one other point there. I think it's using I think GPS ODOM wants to subscribe to something called heading, and I think he might have modified the NavSat driver to put out that heading so he could subscribe to that. But other than that, he just had those hooked together, and he was able to feed that into his move base or whatever combination of move base he was running at the time. And that way, that gives you your absolute position of the world and gives you your heading, and that should allow you to drive around without figuring out all that other stuff. And you can always add all that other stuff on later, but that would be that's the way I would approach it at this point. And
I can certainly try that. I mean, because it's easy enough to start with just GPS. And yeah, he definitely modified the NavSat driver. And I have some jiggery pokery to do because my heading in the NMEA statements is not stable, because even though it gets RTK, it does move a little bit, and that's enough for the heading to change. So I've got to test to make sure I'm moving before I use the heading out of my GPS.
you have the modified version that Matt his NMEA NavSat drive that he changed. Is that still posted somewhere, or do you have that? So you can go back to that. I know one point you said when you installed the new stuff, you took the stock one and put in. I didn't know if you still had the original code. Which if you have the original code, you can just figure out which lines need change and put them in your new stuff. That would be another way around that.
Yeah, yes, I have it. It's the same. Well, I have what's out on, it's still in ROS agriculture. And then I did a comparison, pulling it up. The comparison of those two. Let me share small font, have to make it bigger. Come on. Ooh, too big. I mean, so left is ROS ag, right is generic. It's this HDT, you can see this LSF GST doesn't start until down here in the generic. So he added basically this
Yes, he's publishing heading as a quaternion is what he's doing there. And I think that's what his other code wants to see. So theoretically, you can just cut that out and stick it in your code you got now to get around the whole Python 2 versus Python 3. Just take the lines out here you need and put them into your new stuff, and that would probably work.
So, and I'd have to change the launch files and try to pull in the right URDF. I'm just talking out loud here, but all the previous launch files were launching the ROS ag. I don't know if it was move base or move base plus. Anyway, so sort of walking through all that stuff.
I was digging through the Google Drive, and I found where people were backing up their workspaces, and I was digging through your Raspberry Pi and your desktop one. And for some reason, when I'm in there, I'll pull up a thing that says, here's a launch file, and I'll click on it and it says, I cannot do a preview of this. Do you want to download it? And I say yes. And it sits there for a couple of, sits there for 10 seconds with little messages flashing by at the bottom. It would never download it. So I couldn't, there's some stuff in there I just can't look at, and I don't know why. I think I would have the option. I could go to the top and say, I want to download the entire thing as a zip file. That might work. But anyway, so I was digging around there. Finally, I was out digging through the backups of the ROS agriculture Slack channel, and that's where I got the pointer to Matt's GitHub or whatever, where he had that GPS ODOM stuff. Then this morning I was laying in bed thinking about this stuff, and I thought, I'm sure I was doing that translation, even though I didn't have the navigation stuff run. I was doing the translation because some of the videos when I was showing my robot driving around, I was showing my front antenna and my back antenna, and I was taking the output of the GPS drivers and converting that to my offset in my XY offsetted meters. So I pulled up my computer today, and sure enough, that there is code. I've got a directory full of all kinds of little scripts that I was playing with. And let's see. And just before we started the meeting, I tried to get this computer on Zoom, and it screwed up everything. We had to start over. So I can't show you right now what it is, but I got this, how many is in here? How come they don't just tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18, 20. I got 21 files in this thing. It's just little scripts that I was playing with. And I see there's some BNO 55 and there's some BNO 85. And then I've got something that says forward velocity, rotational velocity to angle. So that might be the one where we're trying to extract out. As I was driving around, I wanted to figure out, as I'm just driving around on the ground, it would generate a number saying, this is the recovered steering angle. I think that's what that one was doing. And we played with that for a while. Here's a Gazebo odometry, which, again, you want to avoid Gazebo completely at this point because this has nothing to do with simulation. And I got a GPS heading. So I had a script that would extract the NavSat velocity. The standard driver puts that out. That's a vector telling you it's like a forward velocity, or it's an X velocity and a Y velocity as a vector. And I was able to take that and extract out the forward velocity and the heading from that. So just out of the standard message, I can get a heading out of that, and I can get the forward velocity. Once you have those two, then you can say if your velocity is above like 1/10 of a meter per second, update it. And if not, don't update it. And that effectively latches it when you stop. So I've got something that should run. And then that thing we were talking about before, that GPS ODOM, which is something Matt wrote, and Al has used it. And I took it, I think I modified it a little bit to get it to work with my stuff. But, I had like 3 copies of that running. So I had one that would take, I think it would take the back GPS and just plot out the XY of where it is. And I think I tried to remap that one to baselink, and then tried to remap the front one to baselink. So I had 3 copies of that running, putting out all that data. And that's, if you go back through our videos on the YouTube page, you can see it's the one that has all the circles driving around. And that's the one where I was doing that. That's how I was getting that information. So I think I've got that to work. And I'm not sure that the output of any of these is actually what the navigation stuff wants to see, but I think I had to the point where I was able to do that. And there's some other just random stuff in there that, here's a steering feedback. And that's where I soldered a wire onto my giant RC servo and had an Arduino that was just reading the analog value and publishing that. So but I just got some stuff like that stuck in there. So I need to go dig through this and see what's there and what seems to be appropriate. So I think that would, a combination of, either modifying the original NavSat driver to put the heading in there, or use my external program that just takes the velocity message and generates a heading. I don't know if that's putting out a heading in like degrees/radians, or if it's putting out the quaternion, but it can be modified either way to put all that stuff out. So this stuff is on this computer, and it does still exist. But
That's
no,
cool.
I haven't actually tried tied into navigation stuff first.
Yeah, my simple goal is to be able to click on the screen and issue a 2D nav goal and then tune the steering hopefully for it to achieve that.
The other thing I was
But
noticing as I was digging back through this stuff, and I was actually on your backup of your workspace. This was for, I don't remember if it was on your Raspberry Pi or on your desktop, but I was looking, I found a launch file I could view. I noticed in that one it was you're just calling it the lawn tractor as opposed to the simulator or something. So you're working towards doing this, and I noticed it loads the move base flex as opposed to move base, and then it loads the that thing Vinny was doing with replacing the normal stuff with the what's that called, something behavior trees. He put that in there, and so it's it's getting quite a ways away from just making the thing move. And I recall that on the simulator that was running the stage simulator, you could fire it up and you could see the vehicle on the screen. You'd say drive over here, and it would go from here to drive over here and come to a stop, and then it wouldn't go again. You'd have to reset the whole thing before it would take any more commands. So I think there's something, somebody stopped short on that in the behavior tree. It needs to say once you reach the goal and come to a stop, that it needs to jump back to the idle point of the behavior tree. Because Juan and I were talking about that one day, and Juan says, "Yeah, that does that to me too." And he says, "I just have to restart the whole thing every time I try to do a new goal." So there's something funny about that. I don't know if it's as simple as removing the lines in your launch file that say load up the behavior tree, if that'll put it back to normal. And theoretically, you can go all the way back to move base and not use move base flex. Is that what it's called? Yeah, move base flex. So because going to move base flex, well, you're adding some other stuff on top that somebody thought you should have, and then he said, well, let me replace the normal internal stuff with the behavior tree, and it just keeps getting further and further away from the stuff that just plain works. So just keep that in mind that you might run into that.
I'm all for simple.
And
So
I hadn't really noticed before. I just within the last 6 months or whatever, where you're looking at stuff, and it turns out you can say load up move base, and the only thing you have to do to get Tab Planner to work, there's one line that says replace local planner with Tab Planner, and that's all it takes to get the Tab Planner to work inside of move base. So you could just use the standard move base and then load the Tab Planner into it, and then not put all this extra stuff on top of it. But I don't know. I don't have an example of that here. So maybe the original stuff, the original scripts or launch files that were on the ROS agriculture stuff, which I can't find anything out there anymore. And I never could really find anything, but it's gotten the point where I go digging and I can't find. I think one of my problems is I go out to the Google Drive, and it turns out there's probably more stuff, but I can't get to it either because I don't know how to, or because I don't have access or whatever. So there's probably more stuff there. And then I also noticed that there used to be a wiki associated. It's like anything else when somebody says, let's promote this, let's find every social media site to promote it on, let's take all these different places to store code and store documents. So, it just spread out all over the entire world. And now as stuff fell apart, we've either lost links to it or people just blatantly deleted it or whatever. So I was digging, I couldn't find anything. So now that I realize I've got stuff on my robot computer that does a lot of this stuff, that for me, that puts me back in a position where I don't need to go track all it down. But the reason I mentioned the wiki is because when I was let's see, how did I find it? On my computer, I've got the backups of the ROS agriculture Slack channel, and Doug had converted those into PDF files. And so I was searching through there, and it said, oh, well, here's this code out to, I think it's when I was looking for the GPS ODOM stuff, and it said, here's a link, and sure enough, that took me to Matt's GitHub site, and I found that. But the whole point was I was going to post that. I realized it says it's a link to my hard drive where the PDF is, and I thought, well, I'll just go out go out where it originally was, and it was under the ROS Agriculture Lawn Tractor Wiki. And now it could just be right there where it says lawn tractor in the upper left-hand corner. If you click on that, and then normally across the top, you're right there, one of those would say wiki on it. And that it no longer says that. I was thinking maybe just because I've got my computer screwed up so bad that, hey, I didn't think of that. If you back up to older versions, would it have a link to the wiki at that point? So if you just say oh, branches, yeah. I didn't go down this path of trying to find somebody else that has archived it, and possibly, yeah, there's right there says wiki. What's that? I think I got it to this point where, yeah, you click on wiki, but it just takes you back to the page and it doesn't actually show you the wiki stuff. But under the wiki, there was a bunch of stuff like as I say, the backups of the backups of the ROS Agriculture Slack channel and all that stuff. But it's just simply I noticed that a lot of stuff has gotten lost and it's hard to go track anything down anymore.
Yeah, it's like piecing together a puzzle and you can't find the corners. Yeah, here's a couple of references to that behavior tree.
If you could like back up one level there and look in the launch file and see if it's got the behavior tree stuff stuck in there. And then I've noticed that a lot of this stuff, it's trimmed down to the point where I think all the stuff got hidden into the Docker file. And so you can't actually find the source code here on the level that you're at right there. And under Docker, that I didn't know what to do with that stuff, and I didn't really care. I didn't want to learn Docker. But apparently you could say, load the Docker, compile my computer, and then possibly that expands out and you can see all the directories and all the source code and everything. But I have never attempted to use Docker and I didn't really want to learn it. So that's just some of the stuff I was digging through trying to find this stuff.
Yeah, it definitely looks different than the last time I looked at it.
Well, theoretically, on the like that page you're looking at, you should be able to say, back up to an earlier version of this whole mess, and then theoretically find the if somebody didn't hack it completely where it's completely gone. But like under master there at the top, if you'd say instead of master, go see if it gives you older. No. There was a wiki that showed up there when you were just looking. So
yeah, I had clicked on it before.
Oh, and that just takes you back to the lawn tractor, I think, because since the wiki link has disappeared, it just takes you to the back to the main page. So now, no, actually, you can say check out an older version, and I don't know if the versions would be listed under where it said master there, if that's where the versions are, so you know what they're called. But anyway, it's maybe that one says either develop or feature add publisher. Maybe one of those would have more stuff in it. But since it was done on this same repository, it could be that no, that stuff's just gone. So I don't know.
Hmm.
Do you have snow on the ground where you are?
It is no. We had it 24 hours ago, but it came and went.
Well, it snowed at least twice here now, so I got snow in my front yard. And then they said it's supposed to get cold like tonight or tomorrow night, so it's probably not going to go away. But so even if I wanted to go out and drive around, I got snow on the ground now.
See, I have that GPS SODOM in my GIST as well.
Okay.
just to see if
So you were smart enough to back up your own stuff there, so you've got it. So it didn't occur to me. I knew you had that stuff out there. I didn't know how to get to that. Actually, I did know how to get to it. Just didn't occur to me that I should go look at that because I know you got lots of stuff out there.
mini broadcasts and ODOM. And there was also, I thought, a TF. Yeah, there's the ODOM broadcaster. There was one other TF related thing in there.
So another question that I had was, if you're trying to run this with the navigation, what does it use out of that odometry message? And if you scroll down about a page, it was showing it loading that up, and it looks like just loading in the go down further.
Well, it publishes to ODOM.
I know, but down here where it's building right there. Stop moving. It says set the position. Let's see. It says up above. It says build odometry message, ODOM base link base footprint, and then it says set the position. It's loading X, Y, and YA into that. Now, technically, ODOM also has your recovered forward speed and your recovered rotational velocity. And I see that's not getting loaded in there. So either navigation doesn't care about that, or people just didn't realize it's supposed to be in there. If the stuff was driving around, navigation probably just doesn't care about that. So that's one thing where there's actually two more fields on that aren't being loaded. And apparently you don't have to know that, because if this was working, then you don't care, I guess. This goes back to the point where you can generate a standard message in ROS, and other nodes may or may not use the fields that you've put in there. So I'm guessing in this case, navigation doesn't care about your immediate, your current forward velocity and your current rotational velocity, because it's not being supplied. I assume those would just be zero if you look at the actual odometry message while it's running. And I in the last couple of days, that occurred to me that, well, this thing is generating an odometry message and you'd have to come up with that. But I see right here, this is showing that no, you don't have to load those, and apparently everybody's happy with it. And unless it would run better if you put those values in, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I never got to the point of being able to test beyond the whole confusion about command velocity, angular, whatever, X or Y, whatever it was, whether that's a radian or a number or an angle. I think there was just a fundamental miss when I was trying to test on what was supposed to be in that field. So just trying to get back to that point. Now that I have a LoRa based e-stop and joystick. Anyway, that's the fun I have to talk about today.
Let me make sure I save this chat. I think one time I lost the chat completely, and I don't know what happened to it. So I try to get in the habit of, before we're done, to save the chat. And something I need to do here before the hour. So let me punch up something else here. And I need to bookmark this. So and come on.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if it's a compiler issue or what, but remember this? Remember that code you provided?
Yeah.
For some reason, it stopped working. And I tend to think that there's some compiler issue going. But since it was magic code, I didn't know how to fix it. So
Does it give you errors or it just simply doesn't put anything out?
I mean, it publishes a number. The number is just nonsensical. I mean, it's not like non-decimal numbers. It's just like I'm looking for 400 and it's producing 65,000 or something. And like I said, I think there's some compiler dependency. It's just a pure guess on my part, but
Yeah, it could be some of those variables aren't defined as the right size because this is, expecting the variables to be, 16-bit or 32-bit or whatever. And it could be when, like the variables, there's one called bit shift, curve, pause, somewhere that had to be defined.
I don't know. I get my bar here at the bottom. Yeah, they were all
Yeah, that specifically says,
yeah, other than rotational position, which was the total,
yeah.
everything was 16.
And to debug it, you can put, in between there, put print statements and say, you added this, now print out the value, do this, print out the value and see if it does stupid things in between steps there. That'd be one way to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what would be legitimate or not legitimate after this statement as an example. So the left
that line is
bits in current position are shifted out of existence.
so that it's multiplying the number by 4, and when it says shifted out of existence, it could be that it's just trimming off the upper 2 bits is what that's doing. And then I was thinking it had to shift it back down. Well, let's see, it says last position, so it's doing that to 2 different values, and it subtracts the 2 and then slides them back down where it's supposed to be. So off the top of my head, I can't think what would cause it to work on one and not the other. Is it because you're trying to compile this under the new, so the new computer? So you've got Ubuntu 2004, and you've got Python 3, and you've got whatever else is going on. Does it still work on your old computer if you compile and run it there, or is it just simply not work at all anymore? I.e., does it work on one computer and not the other computer? That was my question. Or do you not know?
Yeah, the hex code that was loaded on the Teensy worked until I recompiled it.
So this is not under Linux. This is actually on a Teensy then, which would make sense.
The only Linux connection is the Arduino IDE is running on an Ubuntu 20, machine.
Okay.
So I assumed it was, let's just say the Arduino IDE for Teensy 1.14, and now I'm at 1.19. I assumed it was something in that change. It didn't like. Only because I've had some other very, peculiar, none that I can specify at the moment, but in the back of my head, I can remember some other peculiar issues, I think, linked to the compiler. Anyway, so this is multiplying times 4.
It just takes a whole number and shifts it over by 2 places to the left. So if you got, was this a 16-bit number probably? Whatever it was, it shifts it over, and it just leaves zeros in the lower 2 positions, I think is what that's doing. So it shifts it up so that your upper bits are filled. And then when you do your subtract, everything is just simply left shifted, and that keeps the binary math happy is what it's doing. So when you're all done, then after you subtracted 2, then it says shift it back down and put it in the normal range again.
Mm.
Right offhand, I can't think why it should make a difference, because you specifically defined your variables as 16-bit signed or 16-bit unsigned, so that the compiler should be smart enough to understand that and run with it. So I don't know.
Anyway, so I have had to go down another path to get data out of my encoder. But if I'm just going to use GPS, then maybe I just should work on my launch files and get RViz going and GPS going and get the URDF from the PCAR thing that you wrote, because that's probably a better use of my time. On to launch files. Anything else going on?
No, other than, as I said, it snowed, so that puts that changes my view of the world a little bit. Even though I wasn't actually doing anything outside, it just reminds me that, well, that's probably the end of driving anything around outside for the moment. But what's another reason? Now that I've got this far on my little robot, I can go ahead and finish that. I can actually drive around in the house and do basically the same things inside the house, minus the GPS, because it doesn't work well enough through the roof to for that to work. But I can put on a LiDAR or whatever I want. So it's just,
You have a big expensive LiDAR, don't you?
I do, but that's not going to fit on the little robot. But I've got the little ones off the vacuum cleaners do indeed work, and they'll give me a full 360-degree scan if I choose to do that. As long as it's above everything, so there's nothing blocking its view, it gives you a full 360-degree scan. A 360-degree circle, not a 3D LiDAR.
Okay. Well, I'll just try to maneuver first with GPS and go back to the GPS ODOM thing.
And the only real trick is whatever topics those things are putting out, does the next node understand that? And since you had that full stream hooked together at one point, I'm assuming those should all be adequate. And it looks like the only thing at this point, you may have to put that, if you're going to use it the way it is, you may have to go back to your new NMEA NavSat driver and put in the lines of code to publish that heading. And I don't remember if there's anything else that got done to that. But putting that in, I think it should be back to where it'll give you the right stuff there.
So this is
go
ahead.
When I was digging through your saved files, it looked like you were running, maybe the navigation stuff was on your desktop and that the GPS stuff was on the Raspberry Pi. It wasn't obvious to me where you were running your different nodes at that point. And now your new one, if you're just going to run a laptop on your vehicle, do you not have a base station anymore, or a ROS base station, or if you do, are you just running RViz on it?
I haven't gotten to the point of having a base station. I was just remoting into the tractor laptop.
Oh, okay.
And in the RPi world, everything ran on the RPi. I just had some visualization. I was just subscribing to some topics and publishing them on the base station. Not
Oh,
publishing, but reading them.
okay, because it's not obvious by looking at your two workspaces. You seem to load the same code on both of mostly the same code on both of them. So I wasn't sure if you're running say running the navigation on the desktop and running the other stuff on the RPi, or it wasn't obvious to me. And since most of the files I couldn't look at, it kept saying they're binary files, and you have to download it, and then I wouldn't download. So I was just guessing on a lot of that stuff when I was looking at.
Yeah, that's because in the ROS agriculture GitHub, you just got everything, right? And so I put everything on both machines, and I would never run the simulator off the RPi, but it's just the way it cloned.
Okay.
So this is the launch file in Ackerman vehicle description, which is in this PCAR source. And it launches that Ackerman vehicle launch. Where was that Ackerman vehicle launch? No, that's not actually there. Vehicle description, launch, Ackerman vehicle launch.
Which that's probably all for the Gazebo simulator. So you probably don't want any of that stuff. I think you want to back up to your original files before you grabbed any of the simulation stuff that I was working on. So basically the stuff that was on your original Raspberry Pi, I think that's probably the launch files and the nodes you want to use.
Let's see what that's looking like.
And that's one of the few files I could actually view by going out to the Google Drive and looking under your Raspberry Pi backup for your workspace. And I went down to where it said launch file, and that one actually popped up, so I could see what you're doing there. And I was thinking that's probably closer to what you want to do than trying to take any of the stuff that I was doing for Gazebo, because that's going to have at no point was that simulation stuff meant to be a tutorial or meant for anybody else to understand. Just after I had it run, you say, "Oh, publish that, publish that." So I put it out there. So it's not supposed to make sense, and it's not supposed to be at a point where you can move back and forth between anything. So just be careful about following any of that stuff.
So
Yeah, it was probably under lawn tractor directory. Oh, you got some files out there.
well, this is where the raw serial stuff would get fired up. So there were some parameters in here, and then the raw serial for the speed to pull the front angle from the angle sensor, and then let's see, steer motor. Yeah, I forget exactly whether that was a reading or writing or both. But then under lawn tractor. No, that's not.
Yeah, that was another problem I had trying to figure out where stuff is actually stored. And I kept poking at it until I finally ran across you had a launch file that started up the navigation stuff.
See, this was the launch file with the simulator. This was the launch file.
Yeah, whatever the directory that's in, that was the one. I think that launch file there. Yeah, so that's what I was looking at there. So I was looking at this. This seems to start up all of your navigation stuff. So apparently your GPS is started up in a different launch file. But it seems like this is the stuff that would make sense to go ahead and work with this stuff here. And that thing right there, what's saying it's to replace the old smash code and put in uh, the new behavior tree. I don't know if you could just comment those lines out and not run that, in which case that problem would go away or not. I didn't play with any of that stuff that he put together, so I don't know what you can do on that. But you're still gonna have to load a map. You're still gonna have to load the navigation. You have to still have to load all those configuration files. And it is running move base flex as opposed to move base, which I don't think is going to be a major problem. But just keep in mind, if you get it all running and it only runs once and you have to reset everything, then possibly try to remove that thing down below that said replace smash with the behavior tree. I think just commenting that line out would probably, yeah, that line, right, the line, yeah, that line right there. Probably if you comment that out, that would get around that problem, just put you back to a normal driving around. But again, I haven't really done anything with it, so I'm not sure if that will work or not. Just keep in mind you might need to do that.
Okay.
So I'm thinking if you start up this file, that'll start up your whole navigation thing, and then you need something that launches where you're going to launch your GPS ODOM. You're going to have to launch your actual GPS receiver. So I assume you have another launch file that did all that. At one point, I'm assuming you typed in something and the thing would drive, be drivable at that point. I don't know how drivable it was, but I assume you had it all connected together at one point at this level.
Yeah, but um, I guess there's a decision. Is it going to be move base flex or move base?
It probably doesn't matter too much at this point because I think move base flex simply would let you load in a path or something. And as long as you're not trying to force a path into it, I think it'll work the same way. So if this works, then I would say just go with what you got here and try it and see if anything acts stupid. And if it does, then you can decide to do something else.
And this says use the vehicle state publisher. In your simulator, you have an Ackerman vehicle publishers thing.
Well, again, keep in mind that's to do Gazebo simulations. So, don't put a lot of faith into anything that was in that stuff I published.
And so would you use the URDF that you created or no?
No, I'd use the one that you have.
Well, I don't have any of this because this wouldn't load in Noetic.
What did it do? Did it complain or did it just wouldn't run or?
It's been a while. There was a
There is a difference between ROS 1 and ROS 2, but as far as I know, Noetic is ROS 1. This should have worked unless it just simply can't find the packages. That might be the other issue, in which case you might just have to manually load the packages. I would say go back and run this again and see what the error is. And if it says I can't find robot state publisher, then you might just have to go out and say, load robot state publisher, and then so you can get by each one of these, each one that's complaining, if that's what the problem is. Because these are probably extra packages you loaded back when you were doing your old stuff, and then when you moved to Noetic, they're simply you haven't loaded those packages yet. So if it complains, it says I can't find the package. It says it's neither a file nor a launch file, nor it comes up that message, and that means I got to go out and say apt-get load, sudo apt-get ROS, what is it, Noetic, ROS Noetic, and whatever the package name is to load those. And see, you got it all documented here. You can just go through and see what it says here you had to load.
Yeah, I've forgotten where it blew up, but it certainly blew up on one of these. And I think it was a Python 3 issue. But we'll try it again, see what it says.
Yeah, I'd say try it and then copy the error and post it out and see what's it's complaining about. Maybe we can figure it out.
Cool.
But all your documentation that you did there, can you just search through that and say search for sudo apt-get install and find out what package you did manually load? That might tell you something there. If it is missing packages, that might give you a list of what you have to load. And if it turns out to be a Python problem, well, then you either have to get a newer version of that node, or depending on where your nodes came from. If they're ones you manually wrote, then you might have to modify it to work for Python 3. But if it's a standard ROS package, it just seems like you go out to Noetic and say, give me this package, it'll be the one that's updated to work with Python 3. So it's just it's a matter of looking at it and see what's it complaining about, and then try to figure out how to get around that.
Okay. Well, I'll see what it complains about.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
Nope. I was hoping the Gazebo thing would be, and the URDF you did would be more intertwined, but I guess we'll back away from that and go back to the ROS ag.
No, that would be the exactly wrong thing to do to try to put that into a physical vehicle.
Okay, well, I don't want to be exactly wrong. Although being exact is good, exactly wrong is, I guess, not so good.
Well, that if it's just partially wrong, then you get a path to figure out why it's partially wrong. So,
I think you can turn off recording.
okay.